The Apache woman I saved was in my bed when I woke up. The reason left me speechless. The words alone sound like a fever dream, but that morning was real. The sun broke through the cracked cabin window, spilling gold across the floorboards and onto the woman lying beside him. The same Apache woman he had pulled from the jaws of death just hours before. Now, her eyes were open, watching him with a calm he couldn't understand. Why had she stayed? Why was she here? And what truth was she about to reveal that would change everything? The Apache woman I saved was in my bed when I woke up. The reason left me speechless. At first, I thought it was another desert dream. The morning light spilled through the cracked shutters, painting stripes of gold across the worn floorboards. My chest rose, breath caught halfway between disbelief and fear. She was there, the same Apache woman I had dragged from the edge of death only hours ago, now lying still beneath my old wool blanket. Her dark hair shimmered in the sunlight, tangled but alive. Her face, calm and unreadable, held no trace of panic, only quiet awareness. For a long moment I couldn't speak. I'd seen dying men, broken horses and empty towns, but nothing like this. She wasn't supposed to be awake. She wasn't supposed to still be here. Then she turned her head slightly, her voice soft as wind through grass. "You saved me." I swallowed hard. "You were dying. I just did what I could." She studied me for a moment, eyes dark and knowing. "No," she said, "you didn't just save me. You changed something." The words hung in the air, too heavy for morning silence. I stood up, boots scraping the floor. "You should rest," I muttered. "There's water by the door." But she didn't look tired. Her fingers brushed the scarred wood beside her, her gaze tracing the cabin walls as if trying to remember a place she had never been. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. I turned toward her. "Because I couldn't leave you." She hesitated, then whispered, "Maybe you were meant to." The sentence cut through me like a cold wind. Something in her tone, the certainty, the calm, made it feel less like a question and more like fate speaking through her. I tried to shake it off, but when I met her eyes again, there was something else there, recognition. "You don't remember me, do you?" she said. I froze. "No. Should I?" Her lips trembled into a faint, knowing smile. "Once before, you saved me. But that time, you didn't stay." And just like that, the morning didn't feel like salvation anymore. It felt like destiny repeating itself. The silence stretched between them, thick as the desert heat after a storm. Samuel stared at the Apache woman, her words echoing in his mind like a voice from another life. "You saved me once before." He tried to speak, but the words refused to come. How could he have saved her before? He had never seen her, or at least he didn't think he had. And yet the certainty in her tone unsettled him, as if she had reached through time and touched something he had long forgotten. "You must be mistaken," he said finally, his voice rough. "I don't know you." She didn't blink. "Maybe not in this life." Samuel's brow furrowed. "You're talking nonsense." Her gaze dropped to her hands. "You think so?" He wanted to dismiss her words, wanted to chalk it up to shock or exhaustion, but something inside him stirred. A memory, faint and fleeting, a face in the smoke, a cry carried by the wind. He shoved it down, refusing to let it surface. "I'm going to start a fire," he muttered, pushing past her and heading for the hearth. His hands were trembling as he struck the match. The spark caught quickly, flames licking the dry wood. Behind him, the woman spoke again. "You dream, don't you?" Samuel paused, the flame reflecting in his eyes. "What did you say?" "You dream of fire," she said softly, "of screams, of a woman you couldn't save." He turned sharply, his voice low and cold. "How would you know that?" She met his gaze, calm and unflinching. "Because I've seen it too." For the first time in years, Samuel felt the world tilt beneath him. He had told no one about the dreams, the nightmares that had haunted him since the raid years ago, when his world burned and everything he cared for was taken. The faces of those he couldn't save still haunted his sleep. He didn't want to believe her. He couldn't. But her eyes, those dark, knowing eyes, told him she wasn't guessing. She was remembering. He clenched his jaw, turning away. You're playing tricks with my head. That's all. Her voice softened, almost tender. Maybe, or maybe it's the other way around, and maybe you've forgotten me. He stared at the fire, watching it dance. The crackle filled the silence, and for a moment it almost drowned out the pounding in his chest. I don't believe in ghosts, he said finally. Neither do I, she replied, but that doesn't stop them from following. He exhaled, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. You talk like someone who's been running too long. Her eyes darkened. I stopped running when you found me. The room grew colder, though the fire burned steady. Samuel poured water into a cup, offering it to her, needing to distract himself from the strange heaviness that had settled in the cabin. Drink. You need your strength. She took the cup, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent a jolt through him, sharp, electric. Something inside him recognized her, even if his mind refused to. I don't even know your name, he said. Nara, she answered. It means light that endures. He nodded slowly. Fitting. And you? She asked, her tone curious, almost gentle. Samuel Clay. She repeated it quietly, like testing the sound of it. Samuel Clay. Yes, I remember. The fire popped, sending a spray of sparks into the air. He turned toward her sharply. What did you just say? But before she could answer, a sharp knock thundered against the door. Once. Twice. Both of them froze. No one ever came out this far, not unless they had a reason. Samuel reached for his revolver, his instincts kicking in. Stay behind me. Nara's expression didn't change. They've found us. He glanced back at her, confusion crossing his face. Who? Before she could reply, another knock came, louder, impatient. Samuel took a deep breath and stepped toward the door. The handle was cold beneath his palm. Samuel, she whispered, her voice low and urgent. Don't open it. He hesitated. Why? Her eyes locked onto his, dark and unwavering. Because the last time you did. You didn't come back. The room fell utterly silent. Only the fire crackled, spitting sparks into the air like the heartbeat of something ancient. Outside, the wind howled through the canyon, carrying with it the faint echo of hooves. And then, a voice. Deep, familiar, calling his name through the door. Clay, you in there? Samuel's grip tightened on his revolver. The voice was one he hadn't heard in years. A friend once, a killer now. He looked back at Nara. She was trembling, not with fear, but with something worse. Don't answer, she whispered, but it was too late. The door began to open on its own. The door creaked open, the light from outside cutting a harsh line through the dim cabin. Samuel raised his revolver, his finger steady on the trigger. For a heartbeat, he saw nothing but dust swirling in the doorway. Then a shadow moved, tall, deliberate, familiar. Easy there, Clay, the man said, stepping into view. You always did have a quick draw. Samuel's grip tightened. The years fell away in an instant. The man before him wore a deputy's badge tarnished by sun and sin. His name was Dane Holler. Once, they'd ridden together. Once, they'd bled for the same cause. But that was before the betrayal, before everything turned to ash. Didn't expect to see you here, Samuel said, his voice flat. Dane smirked. Didn't expect you to still be breathing. Behind him, Nara had risen silently from the bed. She didn't move toward the door. She moved away from it, toward the corner of the room, her hand instinctively brushing the knife at her hip. Her eyes, though calm, were sharp, watching, calculating. Samuel didn't lower his gun. What do you want? Relax, old friend, Dane said, stepping fully inside. You think I rode all this way just to shoot you? You know me better than that. I did, Samuel replied. Dane chuckled, slow and dry. Still got that tongue on you. Shame it didn't save you back then. Samuel's jaw clenched. The fire crackled behind him, throwing long shadows across the cabin walls. The air between them was heavy, the kind of weight born of memory and betrayal. What's this about? Samuel asked. You don't ride out here without reason. Dane's eyes flicked toward Nara. You tell me. Samuel's stomach sank. She's got nothing to do with you. Dane tilted his head, studying her. Oh, I think she does. Word in town is, you pulled a half-dead Apache woman out of the desert. You always had a weakness for lost causes. Samuel took a step forward, his gun still raised. Say your piece. Dane smiled, that same slow, knowing smile that used to precede something ugly. She's wanted, Clay. There's a price on her head. And it's not just bounty men coming after her. It's the army. The words hit Samuel like a punch. The army. Dane nodded. Seems your little miracle girl isn't what she seems. She escaped from Fort Alvarez, the holding camp. They say she killed 2 soldiers on her way out. Samuel's gaze flicked to Nara. Her face was unreadable. That true? Her silence was answer enough. Dane continued, circling slowly, his boots scraping against the wooden floor. They want her alive. The reward's hefty, enough to buy your way back to civilization, maybe even start over. You could walk away clean, Clay. Samuel said nothing. He could feel Nara's eyes on him, steady and unblinking. Dane's tone softened, almost friendly. I'm giving you a way out, partner. Hand her over. No more running, no more ghosts. Let me take her in, and we'll split it. You can disappear, like you always wanted. Samuel's finger hovered on the trigger. He could almost feel the old life tugging at him, the empty promises, the easy roads paved with blood. Then Nara spoke. He won't do it. Dane turned toward her. And how would you know that? She met his gaze without flinching. Because he's already done it once. Samuel froze. Dane's smirk faded, confusion flickering across his face. What's she talking about? Nara stepped forward slowly, the firelight glinting off her eyes. You betrayed him once. Sold him out for money. Left him to hang. That's why you came back, to finish what you started. Samuel's pulse pounded in his ears. The room tilted. How could she know that? That betrayal was buried deep, a memory he'd locked away with whiskey and silence. Dane's hand brushed his gun. You should listen to her, Clay. She's dangerous. Samuel's voice came low. You didn't answer her question. What question? Why you're here now? Dane hesitated. Then, in one smooth motion, he drew his revolver. Because this time I'm not leaving without her. The 2 men stood in silence, guns drawn, firelight flickering between them. Nara didn't move. She stood between them, not afraid, but waiting, watching. Then she whispered something under her breath, words in a language Samuel didn't understand. The air seemed to shift. The wind outside died. Even the fire hesitated, its flame bending toward her. Dane, Samuel said, his voice low, don't do this. But it was already too late. The gunshot shattered the air. Dane stumbled backward, clutching his arm as blood darkened his sleeve. Samuel blinked, stunned. He hadn't fired. Neither had Dane. Smoke curled from the small pistol in Nara's hand, one Samuel hadn't even seen her draw. Get out, she said softly. Dane stared at her, hatred and disbelief mingling in his eyes. You're making a mistake, Clay. You don't even know what she is. Samuel stepped closer, gun steady. I know enough. Dane spat blood, his voice a growl. Then you'll die for her. Same as before. He turned, staggering out into the pale light beyond the door. His boots crunched against the dirt until the sound faded into the wind. The door creaked shut again, leaving only silence and the echo of what had just begun. Nara lowered the gun slowly, her hand trembling. Samuel stared at her. You want to tell me what that was about? She met his gaze, her expression hard. He's not wrong. You don't know what I am. The wind moaned through the cracks in the wall, carrying the faint smell of smoke from the valley below. Samuel holstered his gun, his voice cold. Then start talking. Nara looked toward the window, her eyes distant. You wouldn't believe me if I did. Try me. Her lips parted, but before she could speak, the light outside flickered red. Smoke? Not from the fire, but fierce from the horizon. The army was coming. The horizon burned like a living wound. Smoke curled upward, black and heavy, staining the morning sky. Samuel stepped out of the cabin, his jaw tightening as the bitter scent of fire hit his lungs. He'd seen this before, too many times. Towns razed, camps turned to ash. The army didn't come quietly. Behind him, Nara stood in the doorway, the firelight from inside flickering across her face. "They found us," she said simply. Samuel turned toward her. "You knew they would." She didn't answer. Her silence was an admission. "How far?" he asked. She looked past him, her eyes narrowing toward the valley. "Close. Less than an hour. Maybe less." Samuel's hands tightened into fists. "Then we need to move." He went to the horses, his movements sharp and methodical. Years of running had taught him that hesitation could get you killed. He threw the saddle over his horse, cinched the straps, and reached for his rifle. Inside the cabin, Nara gathered what little she had, nothing more than a canteen, a blanket, and the small pistol still warm from the last shot. She hesitated, glancing at the bed where she'd woken hours earlier. Her fingers brushed the coarse fabric, and a flicker of something crossed her face, something almost like sorrow. When she stepped outside, Samuel was already mounting up. "We'll ride north," he said. "Through the pass. They'll expect us to take the trail east." Nara swung up behind him without argument. "They'll follow either way." He gave a grim smile. "Then we'll make them regret it." The horses took off at a gallop, hooves pounding against the dry earth. The wind whipped through Samuel's hair, carrying with it the distant shouts of soldiers and the metallic echo of bugles. The sound crawled beneath his skin like a memory he couldn't escape. As they rode, Nara spoke over the roar of the wind. "He wasn't lying, you know, about what I did." Samuel didn't look back. "You killed them?" "Yes." Her tone was calm, not proud or defensive, just honest. "They were going to burn my people alive. I stopped them." Samuel gritted his teeth. "You killed soldiers. You know what that means." "I killed murderers," she said. "The uniform doesn't change the truth." He didn't reply. He wanted to believe her. Part of him already did. But the law didn't care about reasons. It only cared about bodies. The ground began to rise beneath them, the canyon narrowing into a steep path. The smoke behind them thickened, the sound of gunfire now faint but growing. Samuel urged the horse faster, but Nara's hand gripped his shoulder. "Stop," she said suddenly. He frowned. "We don't have time." She shook her head. "There's another way." Her eyes darted toward a split in the canyon wall, barely visible, half hidden by brush and stone. A narrow opening, too small for a wagon, but just wide enough for a horse and two desperate souls. Samuel hesitated. "That leads into the Devil's Basin." "Yes," she said. "They won't follow us there. Because it's a dead end." She met his gaze. "Because they're afraid of what's inside." He wanted to argue, but the sound of riders behind them cut through the wind. Close now, close enough to see the dust rising from the trail. "Go," Nara said. Samuel turned the reins sharply, spurring the horse toward the narrow gap. The entrance swallowed them in shadow. The light dimmed. The air grew colder. The canyon walls pressed in on either side, streaked with black mineral veins that gleamed faintly in the half-light. Every hoofbeat echoed like a drum. The path wound deeper, twisting through rock that seemed to breathe. "Where does this lead?" Samuel asked. Nara's voice was quiet. "To the place where they buried my people." He glanced back. "You brought us into a graveyard." "It's not what you think," she said. "They tried to erase us, but the land remembers." Samuel didn't know what she meant. But as they moved deeper, the air began to change. It smelled faintly of sage and iron, of rain that never fell. Then the horse shied suddenly, snorting and tossing its head. Samuel pulled on the reins, steadying it. "Easy." "What is it?" He didn't answer. He could see it now, shapes carved into the canyon walls. Faces, hundreds of them, weathered by time but unmistakable. Stone visages of Apache men and women, their eyes hollow but watchful. Nara dismounted slowly. "This is where they fell," she said softly. "And where I became what I am." Samuel slid off the horse, scanning the walls. "What are you talking about?" Her hand brushed one of the carvings, and for an instant the stone beneath her fingers seemed to pulse with faint light. "I didn't survive that night," she said. "Not the first time." Samuel stared at her, his heart pounding. "What do you mean, not the first time?" She looked back at him, eyes shimmering like obsidian under moonlight. "The woman you saved, she died a long time ago." The wind howled through the canyon, whispering in a language older than either of them. The carved faces seemed to shift in the flickering light, watching, listening. Samuel took a step back. "You're saying you're—" Nara's expression didn't change. "I'm what happens when mercy and vengeance share the same soul." A sound echoed behind them, the thunder of hooves. The soldiers had found the entrance. Nara's eyes hardened. "They shouldn't have followed us here." The ground trembled. The carvings began to glow. Samuel reached for his gun, but the canyon itself began to move, and then the walls started to breathe. The walls of the canyon groaned like something waking from a long, terrible sleep. The carved faces, hundreds of them, seemed to exhale dust and light as cracks of gold ran through the stone like veins of fire. Samuel staggered backward, his breath caught in his throat. The air felt alive, pulsing in rhythm with a sound beneath his feet, deep, steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. "What's happening?" he shouted, gripping his revolver tighter, though it felt useless in his hand. Nara didn't answer right away. Her gaze was fixed on the glowing faces, her expression unreadable. Then, in a low whisper, she said, "They've awakened." "Who?" She turned toward him, her voice almost reverent. "The ones who died here. The ones the world forgot." The soldiers' voices echoed faintly through the canyon's mouth behind them, barking orders, the metallic clatter of rifles being loaded. Samuel's instincts screamed to move, to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. The air was too thick, too charged. "Nara," he barked, "we need to get out of here." She shook her head slowly. "No, Samuel, not yet. This is what they wanted you to see." "What are you talking about?" Her hand touched the nearest carving again, and the stone beneath her palm shuddered. Samuel could see light spreading outward from her touch, branching like roots through the wall. The carved eyes began to glow, their hollow sockets filling with a pale, shifting light that flickered like flame. The first scream came from behind them, a soldier's voice, sharp, terrified. Then another, and another. Samuel turned toward the entrance. Through the narrow crack he could see them, the men who had followed, their torches flickering wildly. One of them fired his rifle, the report echoing like thunder. The bullet hit the canyon wall, and the ground trembled. Then the faces moved. What had been carvings were now something else. The stone figures were turning, their mouths opening, releasing a sound that wasn't a scream, wasn't a whisper, something in between. A sound older than language. Samuel's blood ran cold. Nara stepped closer to him, her voice calm amidst the chaos. "They remember, and now they want you to remember too." "I don't," he began. But the air shifted again, a flash, bright, blinding. He was no longer standing in the canyon. He blinked, disoriented. The smoke, the soldiers, the glowing walls, they were gone. The air was thick with campfire smoke instead, the scent of sage and roasted corn. The sound of drums carried through the night. Samuel looked down. His hands weren't his own, they were younger, unscarred. Around him, the Apache danced beneath the stars, their voices rising in song. Children laughed, women smiled, and there, among them, was her Nara, alive, radiant, her hair braided with feathers, her face painted with red ochre. She turned and smiled at him, the same knowing smile he'd seen that morning. "You promised you'd stay," she said. Samuel froze. What is this?" The world rippled, colors warping. The laughter faded, replaced by the distant roar of fire. The smell of smoke turned acrid. Screams tore through the air. The camp was burning. Men in blue uniforms rode through the flames, rifles cracking, bayonets glinting in the firelight. Samuel's younger self, whoever he was, grabbed Nara's hand, pulling her toward the river. Bullets whistled past them, striking bodies, tense, the earth itself. "Go," he shouted, but she shook her head. "If you leave now, you'll never find me again." The world shattered into light. Samuel gasped, stumbling backward as reality slammed back into place. The canyon, the carvings, Nara. He was back. He stared at her, heart hammering. "That was you. That was me." "Yes. That was years ago." She nodded. "You broke your promise. You left me to die." Samuel shook his head. "No. No, that can't be." But even as he said it, the images still burned behind his eyes. Her face in the fire, his hand slipping from hers. The moment he chose to run, the sound of hooves dragged him back to the present. The soldiers had breached the canyon mouth. Shadows moved against the firelight, dozens of them. Nara turned toward the entrance. Her eyes glowed faintly now, the same hue as the carvings. "They don't know what they've done." Samuel swallowed hard. "Then we need to stop them." Her voice dropped quiet and final. "No, you need to remember." And before he could stop her, she stepped forward into the center of the canyon floor. The light from the carving surged, bright as lightning. Samuel shouted her name, but the sound was drowned by the roar of the awakening canyon. Every carved face opened its mouth at once. The ground split open beneath their feet, and from the darkness below, something ancient began to rise. The canyon floor shuddered beneath Samuel's boots, cracks racing outward like lightning across stone. He stumbled, throwing a hand out to steady himself against the trembling wall, but the rock was warm, alive. The carvings that lined the canyon faces glowed brighter, their hollow eyes now filled with light that pulsed in unison, each beat slower than a heartbeat, but deeper than sound. The wind howled through the chasm, carrying whispers that weren't wind at all. Voices, hundreds of them, murmuring in a tongue he didn't know but somehow understood. His skin prickled. He turned to Nara, but she was no longer where she had been. She stood now in the center of the canyon, the dust swirling around her in a slow spiral. Her hair lifted with the charge in the air, her eyes burning with that same gold light that seeped from the stone. "Nara!" Samuel shouted. "Get back!" She didn't move. Instead, her voice rose above the wind, calm, steady, resonant. "They have waited too long. The land remembers. The blood remembers." The soldiers' shouts echoed through the canyon entrance. Panicked now, not in command. Samuel caught sight of them through the dust, silhouettes of men raising rifles, horses rearing in terror. They couldn't understand what they were seeing. One man fired. The sound cracked through the canyon like thunder. The bullet struck the rock behind Nara, and the wall answered. A surge of light erupted from the carvings. The canyon itself seemed to inhale, and then the faces screamed. A single, piercing sound, raw and human, ripped through the air. Every soldier dropped to his knees, clutching his head. Horses screamed, bolting into the smoke. Samuel fell too, the weight of the sound pressing against his skull like 1,000 hands. He looked up through the haze, vision swimming. Nara stood untouched at the heart of the chaos, her eyes locked on him. "You can't run from what you are," she said. "What I am," he gasped. "The one who broke the circle." The light surged again, and this time Samuel saw something within it, figures moving inside the walls, faces pressing against the stone as though trying to escape. For a moment, he saw himself among them, his younger face filled with fear and guilt. "No, you were there," Nara said. "When they burned my people, you turned away. You were the soldier who walked away while they screamed." Samuel's chest constricted. Images flooded back. The raid, the fire, the woman he couldn't save. He'd buried those memories under a lifetime of silence, convincing himself he'd been helpless. But now he saw the truth. He'd chosen not to look back. He staggered toward her. "If that's true, if I was there, then why did you let me live?" Nara's voice trembled for the first time. "Because even in betrayal, you were the only one who hesitated." Her hand rose, and the golden light around her intensified, coiling through the canyon like living fire. The soldiers fled, their shouts fading into the distance. But Samuel stood his ground, though every instinct screamed to run. "Nara! Stop this!" he shouted. "Whatever this is, it's not justice," her eyes flashed. "It's not vengeance either. It's balance." She lifted her arms, and the canyon answered. The carvings split open, revealing hollows within the rock that pulsed with light. From those cracks, shapes began to emerge, Ethereal figures, their forms half smoke, half stone. The spirits of the fallen. Samuel's knees went weak. The air was thick with their presence, heavy with centuries of grief. He could feel them, each one a fragment of pain, of memory, of unfinished rage. One of the figures drifted forward. A woman's outline, translucent and trembling, reached out toward Nara, her voice a whisper carried on the wind. "Daughter." Nara bowed her head, tears streaking through the dust on her cheeks. "Mother," she breathed. The spirit's hand hovered near her face. "It is time." Samuel felt the canyon darken, the gold light dimming to a deep, red glow. The air grew cold. The ground beneath him pulsed once more, stronger this time, and then began to sink. The canyon was collapsing in on itself. Nara turned to him, her voice urgent now. "You need to leave." "Not without you," he yelled. Her eyes softened. "You already did once. Don't do it again." The earth split open between them, the chasm glowing with molten light. Samuel lunged forward, reaching for her hand, but the distance widened with every heartbeat. "Nara," she looked at him one last time, her expression calm, resolute. "If you live, remember, not everything you save is meant to be kept." The light swallowed her. Samuel fell backward as the canyon erupted in a roar of thunder and flame. When he opened his eyes, he was lying at the canyon's edge. The soldiers were gone. The ground was still. The carvings erased, as though they had never existed. Only the wind moved now, whispering faintly through the rocks. And somewhere in that whisper, he heard her voice. "Will you stay this time?" The desert stretched endless and silent, the dawn painting the sand in muted shades of ash and rose. Samuel stumbled through it, one slow step at a time, the weight of the previous night pressing on his chest like a physical thing. His throat burned, his mind reeled. The canyon was gone. Where it had once stood, there was only a flat, cracked basin. No carvings, no faces, no sign of Nara. The earth had swallowed its secrets, leaving nothing behind but silence. He dropped to his knees, pressing his palms to the cold ground. "Nara!" he shouted. His voice broke in the empty air, swallowed by the wind. Only the desert answered, soft, indifferent. He bowed his head, exhaustion washing over him. The memory of her last words played over and over in his mind. "If you live, remember, not everything you save is meant to be kept." He clenched his fists. "You didn't deserve that," he muttered. "None of you did." For a long while he stayed there, kneeling in the dust, until the sun began to rise higher, the light sharp and unforgiving. He knew he couldn't stay. The army would return, and when they did, they'd find nothing but him. A lone cowboy at the scene of something they'd never understand. He stood, dusted off his coat, and turned toward the open plains. His horse stood tethered near a dead mesquite tree, trembling but alive. Samuel approached slowly, resting a hand on its neck. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "We're not done yet." He swung into the saddle and started north, his mind blank. The land was still, no sound but the wind scraping across the sand, but then a whisper. At first, he thought it was the wind again. Then it came clearer, soft, familiar. "You can't outrun memory." He stopped. The hair on his neck rose. He scanned the horizon. Nothing. "Who's there?" No answer, only the low hum of the desert. He spurred the horse forward, faster this time, needing to put distance between himself and the sound, but the voice followed, faint, like an echo in his skull. "Nara." He gritted his teeth. "You're dead," he hissed. "You're gone." But the whisper only grew clearer. "You left me once. Don't leave me again." He pulled hard on the reins, the horse rearing slightly. The sound was coming from beneath him. He looked down, into the cracked earth. The fissures that ran across the desert floor glowed faintly gold. "No," he breathed. "It can't be." The glow pulsed once, then vanished. The desert went still. He waited, heart hammering. When nothing else happened, he urged the horse onward, forcing himself not to look back. But the thought gnawed at him. If the canyon was gone, why was the light still there? Hours passed. The sun climbed high, cruel and merciless. His canteen was nearly empty when he saw it, a figure in the distance, too still to be an animal. He slowed the horse. As he drew closer, the shape became clearer. A man, slumped against a half-buried rock, his hat lying beside him. Samuel's stomach twisted. It was Dane. The deputy's coat was torn, his face pale beneath the dust. He was breathing barely. Samuel dismounted, crouching beside him. "You're a long way from town, Dane." The man's eyes fluttered open. When he saw Samuel, he tried to laugh, but it came out as a rasp. "You should have let me take her," he croaked. "Yeah," Samuel muttered. "Maybe I should have." Dane's hand twitched, reaching weakly for his chest pocket. "They'll come for you," he said. "For both of you." "There is no both anymore," Samuel said, but the words felt hollow even as he said them. Dane coughed, blood staining his lips. "You really think she's gone?" Samuel froze. Dane smiled faintly, his teeth red. "You don't get it, do you? That woman, she wasn't just one of them. She was them, all of them." "What are you talking about?" "Every soul that died in that canyon, she carried them." His breath hitched. "You think you saw the end?" "You saw the beginning." Samuel's mouth went dry. "You're delirious." Dane laughed weakly. "Maybe. But when you hear her voice again, remember I warned you." He tried to lift his head, but the effort was too much. His body went still. The desert took him quietly. Samuel stood slowly, staring down at the lifeless man. The words lingered like smoke. She carried them. He looked back toward the horizon. The air shimmered with heat, but for a moment, just a moment, he saw her, Nara, standing far off in the distance, her hair whipping in the wind, watching him. He blinked. She was gone. He exhaled shakily. "I'm losing my damn mind." He turned back toward the north. The wind rose again, scattering sand across Dane's body, and then, carried on that same wind, came the faintest whisper, clear, deliberate. "The circle isn't finished." The horse snorted, uneasy. Samuel's heart sank, because this time it wasn't Nara's voice. It was his own. The wind had died by midday, leaving the desert eerily still. Samuel rode in silence, his shadow stretching long and thin across the dunes. Every hoofbeat felt heavier than the last. He hadn't slept since dawn, yet his eyes refused to close. Each time he blinked, he saw the same image, Nara, swallowed by light, her voice whispering through the dust. He pulled the horse to a stop near a cluster of weathered rocks. The land here looked wrong, too smooth, too bare, as if something had burned through it long ago. He slid off the saddle, boots crunching on brittle soil. The air tasted faintly of iron. He crouched and ran a hand across the ground. The surface was warm. Beneath the thin crust of dust, faint veins of gold light pulsed, threading through the stone like buried lightning. His breath hitched. No, not again. He backed away slowly, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved, yet the silence carried a weight he could feel pressing on his chest, like the desert itself was watching him. Then, footsteps, soft, behind him. He spun around, drawing his revolver. A man stood a few yards away. His clothes were wrong, tattered, old, half-burned as if he'd walked through fire. His eyes glowed faintly gold. Samuel's voice came low. "Stay where you are." The man tilted his head, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like dry leaves scraping across stone. "You hear them too." "Who?" "The ones in the ground." Samuel's grip tightened on his gun. "You'd better start making sense." The stranger smiled faintly. "Sense died in that canyon, same as her." Samuel froze. "You know about Nara?" "She knows about you," the man said. "All of her does." Before Samuel could respond, the stranger stepped forward, and the light beneath the ground pulsed, brighter now, throbbing in rhythm with the man's words. "She's not gone, Clay. You think she vanished into the earth? But she only changed shape." Samuel shook his head. "You're not real." "Maybe not. But neither are you. Not anymore." The air shifted. Colder now. The stranger's face flickered. Nara's features appeared in the blur of light for a heartbeat, then vanished. Samuel staggered backward. "What are you?" The man's grin widened. "What you made." The light flared once more, searing the edges of the world. Then he was gone. Samuel blinked, breath ragged, eyes darting across the empty landscape. Nothing. No footprints, no shadow. Only the faint hum of the desert under his boots. He holstered his gun with shaking hands, then mounted his horse again. His heartbeat thudded against his ribs like a drum. "Get a grip," he muttered. "You're seeing ghosts." He rode on, faster this time. The sun was sinking low, bleeding red across the horizon. Shadows stretched long, and with each mile, the light in the cracks beneath him followed, always glowing faintly, always alive. By twilight, he reached an old settlement, a ghost town, half swallowed by sand. The buildings leaned, their signs faded to whispers of letters. He led his horse into what was left of the saloon, tied it to a beam, and sank onto a chair that groaned under his weight. The silence in the room felt thicker than the heat outside. Dust hung in the air like mist. He reached for his canteen, but stopped. The mirror behind the bar caught his reflection, and for the first time, he saw it. His eyes, faint gold. He stared at himself, disbelief flooding through him. He blinked hard, rubbed at his face, but it didn't change. The light pulsed once, faint but unmistakable. "No," he whispered. "No, damn it." He grabbed the edge of the bar, his knuckles white. "You're not in me," he hissed. "You're not." The glass behind the bar cracked, a thin line slicing across its surface. Then, faintly, through that fracture, a voice, soft, unmistakable. "Nara." "How you carry what was unfinished," the voice whispered. "You broke the circle once. Now you must close it." Samuel's chest tightened. "Where are you?" The voice wavered, fading and returning like the wind. "In the land. In the light. In you." He stumbled back, shaking his head. "I don't want this. I didn't ask for this." But the air shimmered again, the faint glow of gold flickering along the floorboards, creeping toward him. And then, another voice, rough, human. Outside, Samuel Clay, he froze. The sound came from the street, a group of riders, boots in the dirt, the heavy clink of spurs. He moved to the window, peering through a gap in the wood. 5 men, army coats, dust-covered rifles slung over their shoulders. The lead rider dismounted, looking directly at the saloon. "Clay!" he shouted again. "You're under arrest for the murder of Deputy Holler." Samuel's blood ran cold. He stepped back from the window, eyes darting to the revolver at his hip. His reflection in the cracked mirror stared back, eyes still glowing faintly gold. Outside, the soldiers spread out, forming a semicircle around the building. Inside, the whisper came again, Nara's voice, soft but commanding. "Don't run this time." Samuel's hand hovered over his gun. Outside, a hammer clicked. Then, the door burst open. The saloon door exploded inward, splinters scattering across the floor. Samuel ducked behind the bar, the sound of boots pounding on the wooden planks echoing through the empty room. The smell of gun oil and dust filled the air. "Samuel Clay," the lead soldier barked. "You're surrounded. Drop the weapon and come out with your hands up." Samuel's hand hovered near his revolver. His pulse thundered in his ears. Outside he could hear the horses snorting, the crunch of shifting boots in the sand. 6 men, maybe 7. He had been in worse odds before, but never like this, never when the ground itself seemed to breathe under him. He risked a glance through the gap in the bar. The men had spread out in a semicircle, rifles raised. Their commander stood at the front, a tall officer with a pale scar running down his cheek and a medal that gleamed in the sun. "I'm Captain Reeves," the man shouted. "You're wanted for harboring a fugitive, Clay, and for murder. Step out, and maybe we'll let you hang in peace." Samuel's jaw tightened. He felt the whisper again, soft inside his head this time. "Don't run." His breath hitched. "Nara." Another voice, louder now, outside. "Last warning, Clay." He swallowed hard, wiped the sweat from his brow and whispered, "I'm not running." He stood up slowly, revolver in hand, and stepped out from behind the bar. The soldiers tensed, rifles ready. "There he is," one shouted. "Hold your fire," Reeves ordered. "I want him alive." Samuel walked to the doorway, light pouring over him. He raised his empty hand, the revolver still hanging loosely at his side. "I didn't kill Dane Holler," he said, his voice carrying across the street. "But you already know that, don't you?" Reeves smirked. "Doesn't matter. The report says you did, and the report's all that counts." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "You work for the same men who burned that canyon, don't you?" The smile faded from Reeves's face. "You've seen things you shouldn't have." The air shifted, an uneasy wind sweeping through the ghost town. The gold light flickered faintly beneath the ground again, threading between cracks in the dry earth. Samuel felt it moving under his boots, pulsing, responding. Reeves noticed it too. His gaze darted to the ground. "What is that?" Samuel didn't answer. The light brightened, winding toward him like living roots. One of the soldiers cursed, stepping back. "Sir, the ground—" "Hold your line!" Reeves barked. But the ground didn't hold. The sand began to vibrate, a low hum rising from the earth like a swarm of invisible insects. The horses reared, snorting and jerking against their reins. Samuel felt the energy coursing upward, climbing through his legs, into his chest, into his arm, the one holding the revolver. The metal burned hot in his hand. "Drop the gun!" a soldier shouted. Samuel looked down. The revolver's barrel glowed faintly gold. The light spread along the chamber, coiling like molten veins. He could feel it, alive, like it had a pulse. Then Nara's voice whispered through the wind. "You can't hide from the circle anymore." Reeves saw the glow and fired. The bullet struck Samuel square in the shoulder, but there was no pain. The round hit, shattered, and dissolved into sparks before it reached him. The soldiers stared in disbelief. "What the—" Samuel exhaled, his breath glowing faintly in the air. "Oh, you should have left," he said quietly. The gold light erupted from his hand, a shockwave that rippled through the street. The nearest soldiers were thrown back, rifles flying. The ground cracked open, glowing fissures racing through the dirt like lightning bolts. Reeves stumbled, shouting orders, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of the earth itself splitting. Samuel's revolver fired on its own. No recoil, no aim, just a flare of light that struck a nearby wagon, sending it crashing into flames. Samuel fell to his knees, gasping, the power still pulsing through him like a second heartbeat. "Stop!" he muttered. "Stop!" But the ground didn't listen. A scream pierced the chaos. One of the soldiers, his boots sinking into glowing sand, as if the earth were swallowing him whole. Another tried to run, only to be pulled down by unseen hands rising from the cracks, hands made of dust and light. Reeves stumbled backward, his face pale. "What are you?" he shouted. Samuel lifted his head slowly. His eyes glowed faint gold. "The land remembers!" Reeves fired again, once and twice, but the bullets turned to ash mid-air. Samuel rose to his feet, the light intensifying around him. The captain fell to his knees. "You're cursed," he whispered. Samuel stepped closer, the ground trembling with each movement. "No," he said softly. "I'm what you made." Reeves's hand reached for his sidearm, but before he could draw it, the earth beneath him split wide open. The light flared, swallowing him in a pillar of gold and smoke. His scream echoed once, then vanished. Silence. The light dimmed. The cracks in the ground began to cool, fading to dull grey. The air stilled again, as if nothing had happened. Samuel stood in the center of the street, chest heaving, the revolver still glowing faintly in his hand. The world was silent, except for the wind and the soft whisper that followed it. "You see now." He turned toward the sound. Nara stood at the edge of the street, half shadow, half light, her form flickering like a dying flame. "You carry it now," she said. "The circle isn't broken. It's moved." Samuel's voice trembled. "What do you want from me?" Her eyes glowed faintly. "To finish what we started." Her figure began to fade, dissolving into the wind. "Nara!" he called. Her last words lingered, haunting and quiet. "When the moon bleeds again, you'll know where to go." Then she was gone. Samuel stood alone, the wind whispering through the ruins of the ghost town, the faint smell of smoke still clinging to the air. He looked down at his hand. The revolver was cold again, but the faint glow in his eyes hadn't faded. And far off, beyond the desert's horizon, the first sliver of a blood-red moon was rising. The desert stretched out before Samuel like an ocean of dying light. The blood-red moon hung low in the sky, casting the land in shades of rust and shadow. He rode through the silence, his horse's hooves leaving prints that glowed faintly for a moment before fading into the dust. It had been 3 nights since the soldiers vanished into the earth, 3 nights since Nara's voice last called his name. Sleep had become impossible. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw faces in the darkness, faces made of dust and flame, whispering things he could not understand. By day, he wandered aimlessly across the plains. By night, the glow beneath his skin returned, soft at first, then brighter, like embers fanned by an unseen wind. It wasn't pain. It was memory. He could feel their lives, every scream, every heartbeat that had ended in that canyon, stirring within him. The land had marked him. He dismounted at a shallow ravine, letting the horse drink from a stagnant pool. The wind carried the faint scent of mesquite and smoke. Samuel crouched, staring at his reflection in the water. His eyes caught the moonlight, burning gold beneath the surface. He slammed his fist into the water, shattering the image. "I didn't ask for this," he muttered, but the reflection spoke back. Neither did she. He froze. The voice was low, unmistakable. Nara's. He looked around, hand instinctively going to his revolver. "Where are you?" "Everywhere you buried me." The wind picked up, stirring the sand. The light beneath the ground began to pulse again, tracing patterns around him. For a moment, it almost looked like writing. Symbols burned into the earth itself. He took a step back, heart pounding. "What do you want from me?" "To remember." The word echoed through the canyon walls. The symbols flared bright, and suddenly the world tilted. The wind roared, sand rising into a storm around him. He shielded his face, but when he opened his eyes again, he was no longer standing in the ravine. He was back in the canyon. Only now, it was alive with fire. Men in blue coats, screaming horses, gunshots, smoke. And there at the center, Nara. She was unarmed, kneeling beside a fallen child. Samuel saw himself, his other self, standing only yards away, rifle in hand. The soldier he had been, the one who had hesitated. He tried to shout, but the sound wouldn't come. The soldier raised his gun. Nara turned toward him, her eyes full of pain and understanding. "Don't," Samuel whispered, voice trembling. But the rifle fired. The blast ripped through the air, and then everything froze. Nara's image flickered. Her body dissolved into light, scattering into the sky. The canyon turned to dust. The fire burned out, leaving only silence. Then a whisper. "Now you understand what you took." Samuel stumbled backward, gasping. He fell hard onto the ground, back in the present, the desert cold against his palms. Sweat ran down his face. The glow beneath his skin had spread to his arms now, veins lit with dull amber light. He pulled his sleeve down, shaking his head. No, you can't." But the whisper cut through him again, soft and patient. "It's not punishment, Samuel. It's inheritance." He pressed a hand against his chest. The faint thrum beneath his ribs wasn't his heartbeat anymore. It was something deeper, slower. It echoed the rhythm of the land. He felt something moving in the distance. He stood, scanning the horizon. Far to the west, the sky shimmered faintly, an orange haze rising from the earth, spreading across the plains like wildfire without flame. The wind carried a low, distant hum. He squinted. It wasn't smoke. It was light. The same gold glow that had haunted him since the canyon, spreading now across the land, following the cracks that ran through the desert floor. And from within that light, shadows moved, dozens of them. Figures. He blinked hard, trying to focus. They were walking, slow, deliberate. Men, women, children, all glowing faintly from within. He recognized their faces, the faces from the canyon walls, the ones that had screamed. They were walking toward him. His breath hitched. No! The wind howled, picking up sand, stinging his eyes. The figures drew closer, their outlines flickering in the haze. He could hear them now, soft, rhythmic, like a chant carried by the air. Nara's voice rose above them all. "You are the bridge, on Samuel. The dead walk because you do." He backed away, his heart hammering. I'm not one of you. The ground split open behind him, light spilling from the cracks like molten fire. You carry what they left behind, the chorus of voices said. You are what remains. The light spread faster now, swallowing the horizon. The glowing figures were only a few yards away, their eyes bright as stars. Samuel raised his gun, more out of instinct than reason, and aimed it at the nearest shape. Stay back. They didn't stop. The revolver trembled in his grip. I said, stay back. The nearest figure lifted its hand, not in threat, in greeting. And when Samuel looked closer, his breath caught. It was Nara. Her eyes were calm, forgiving. Finish it, she said softly, before the world forgets again. The light flared, brighter than the sun. Then, darkness. The wind returned before dawn. It came crawling through the canyons, low and heavy, carrying the scent of stone and rain that hadn't fallen in years. Samuel woke with a start, his body cold despite the desert heat. His hand went instinctively to his revolver, but it was gone. He sat up fast. The sand around him shimmered faintly, swirling in strange geometric patterns, circles within circles, drawn by invisible hands. His horse was gone too. Only silence and those markings remained. He blinked hard, trying to clear the haze from his mind. Nara. The echo came from everywhere at once. You crossed the line. Samuel Clay. He turned slowly. The landscape was wrong. The mesas were too sharp, their shadows moving like living things. The sky wasn't sky. It was a sheet of dull bronze, alive with flickering veins of gold. The air vibrated softly, a low hum that seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. He knew somehow that he wasn't in the waking world anymore. He stood, brushing sand from his coat. Where am I? The wind whispered through him like a voice. Between. He took a slow step forward. The ground beneath him shifted like water, and his reflection rippled up from it. His face, yes, but changed. The same glowing eyes, the same pulsing veins. Only now, his shadow didn't move with him. It lagged behind, like it wasn't sure it wanted to follow. Between what? He asked quietly. Between mercy and vengeance. A shape began to form out of the haze ahead. Human, but tall, too tall, its face hidden beneath strands of black smoke. As it approached, the sand rose in spirals around it. Samuel's hand twitched toward his hip, but again, no gun. You're not her, he said. No, the figure replied, voice neither male nor female. I'm what comes after. He took a step back. What are you? The figure stopped a few feet away. Its outline flickered like candlelight in a storm. The land remembers blood, Samuel Clay. Every drop you spill becomes part of me. He shook his head, anger breaking through his fear. I didn't spill it by choice. The shadow tilted its head. Choice is a story the guilty tell themselves. The words hit him hard. He wanted to deny them, but he couldn't. He saw again the image of the canyon, the rifle, Nara's eyes when she realized who had fired. He felt the sting of that memory like a blade. The figure's voice deepened. You carry their pain, but you also carry their power. The world of flesh can't hold both. Samuel's breath came fast. Then take it back. The shadow moved closer, its smoke-like form curling around him. It doesn't work that way. The light beneath his skin pulsed brighter, crawling up his neck, across his jaw. His eyes burned. He staggered back, clutching his chest. Stop! But the light didn't stop. It surged upward, bursting from his hands in arcs of gold and white. The desert trembled, the sky bending inward like paper caught in a flame. He screamed. The shadow watched, its tone almost tender. You were chosen the moment you pulled her from the fire. You thought you saved her, but she saved you from what you were. The air cracked open. Samuel fell to his knees, gasping. His veins burned like liquid metal. The world spun, colors bleeding into one another until there was no horizon, only endless gold. And through that gold, figures began to emerge again, the spirits of the Apache dead, men, women, children, the ones he had seen before. But this time, they didn't walk. They rose, their bodies woven from the same golden dust that now filled his lungs. They circled him, chanting low in a tongue he couldn't understand. He covered his ears. "Stop it." The shadow spoke again. "You want to return to the world of men? Then learn their song, the song of the forgotten." A hand reached out from the crowd, small, trembling, the child he had seen in the vision. Her eyes glowed faintly, innocent yet ancient. She pressed her palm to his chest. The pain vanished. In its place came memory, her memory, laughter by a fire, drums at dusk, the rhythm of feet on sand, and then the sound of thunder that wasn't thunder, the gunfire that ended it all. Samuel's eyes flooded with tears. "I didn't know, I swear I didn't." The child smiled faintly. "Now you do." Her hand left a mark on his chest, a faint golden circle. The others began to fade, one by one, dissolving into dust. The hum of the desert softened, replaced by stillness. The shadow's voice lingered as it too began to dissolve. "The land gave you her light. Use it, or it will use you." The golden haze around him darkened, collapsing inward. The world folded, the sky twisting into itself until all that remained was a narrow point of light, like the eye of a storm. Samuel stumbled toward it, desperate. The air was thick and electric, each breath heavy with ash and light. "Nara," he shouted, "if you can hear me." The voice that answered wasn't hers. It was Reeves. "Clay," the voice rasped from the darkness, "you didn't think death would stop me, did you?" Samuel froze. The light flared, and through it stepped a figure, half man, half ash, his uniform scorched black, his eyes burning like molten brass. Reeves grinned, a cruel, inhuman thing. "You opened the door," he said. "Now I get to walk through it." The world shuddered, and Samuel realized with dawning horror that Reeves wasn't alone. Behind him, more shapes emerged, other soldiers, their faces half burned, their eyes hollow, glowing faint gold. The men he had killed. The earth beneath Samuel's feet cracked, golden light spilling upward like fire through broken stone. Reeves raised his pistol. "You made us part of this, Clay. Now we're coming with you." The gunshot ripped through the light, then everything went black. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and dust when Samuel woke. He coughed hard, his throat raw, lungs burning. The sky above was no longer gold, it was gray, the kind of dull light that follows after a storm. He blinked. He was back in the mortal world. The desert was silent again, still and dead. His horse was gone. The sand flattened where the bodies of Reeves's men had been, but there were no bodies now. No bones, no blood, only faint scorch marks where the light had burned through the ground. Samuel pushed himself upright, wincing as pain shot through his shoulder. He glanced down at his chest. The golden circle left by the child's touch still glowed faintly beneath his shirt, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. He whispered to the wind, "Nara." Only silence answered. He stood unsteadily, scanning the horizon. For a moment, he thought he was alone. Then he heard it, a low creak, like old leather stretching. He turned sharply. Someone was standing at the edge of the ridge. Reeves. His figure was blackened, half his face burned to bone, his coat torn to ribbons by the desert wind. But he was alive, or something close to it. His eyes glowed faint gold, and when he spoke, his voice came out layered, as if two people were speaking through him. "You didn't think you could leave me down there," Reeves rasped. "Not after what you woke." Samuel took a step back. "You shouldn't be here." Reeves grinned, a slow, twisted stretch of cracked lips. "Neither should you." The wind picked up, swirling dust between them. Samuel's revolver hung heavy at his hip again. He didn't remember picking it up. The metal was cold, but the faint hum inside it told him it wasn't just iron anymore. Reeves's shadow flickered across the sand, splitting into two, then three. Each one moved on its own, circling Samuel. "You opened the ground," Reeves said. "You let them out. You thought you were saving her, but all you did was break the seal." Samuel's pulse quickened. "The circle wasn't meant to be broken," Reeves finished. His burned hand reached toward the sky. The clouds twisted above him, forming a spiral that pulsed with dull light. You think this land belonged to her people? It never did. It belonged to them, the ones beneath it, the ones that fed on war. Samuel drew the revolver. You're lying. Reeves laughed, a hollow, echoing sound that made the sand tremble. Am I? Then tell me why you still hear them. Samuel froze. The whispers. They were faint at first, like distant voices carried on the wind. But they grew louder, surrounding him, weaving through the air like smoke. The same words, over and over, in a tongue he didn't know, but understood. Finish what you began. Samuel's hand trembled on the revolver. They're not calling for vengeance. Reeves stepped closer. No, they're calling for balance. The earth cracked between them, a thin line of gold splitting the sand. Light seeped upward, crawling toward Samuel's boots. He stepped back, but the light followed, coiling around his ankles like living chains. Reeves's voice deepened. You took their curse when you took her hand. You became the bridge between their world and ours. You carry their hunger, Clay, and soon it'll eat you alive. Samuel clenched his jaw. If that's true, then I'll die before I let it spread. Reeves tilted his head, mock pity twisting his burned features. You think you can stop it? Look at yourself. Samuel glanced down. His skin was glowing again, light bleeding through his veins. The pulse inside his chest was stronger now, in rhythm with the whispers. His shadow was gone. Only the golden light remained beneath him. Reeves smiled. You see, it's already begun. You're one of them now. Samuel aimed the revolver. Then I'll take you with me. Reeves didn't flinch. He took another step forward, his voice a low growl. I can't kill what's already dead. Samuel pulled the trigger. The sound echoed across the canyon like thunder. The bullet struck Reeves square in the chest, then passed through him like smoke. The wound glowed gold for an instant, then closed. Reeves looked down, unbothered. Still think you're fighting men? Samuel's grip tightened. The revolver began to burn in his hand. He dropped it, cursing as it hit the ground. The barrel cracked open, light spilling out like liquid fire. Reeves's voice deepened into a roar. This world's ending, Clay. You brought it down with your own hands. The sand around them began to rise, spinning into a cyclone of gold and ash. The wind howled, pulling at Samuel's coat, dragging him toward the light. Reeves's body dissolved into the storm, his laughter echoing across the desert. And then, through the chaos, another voice broke through, clear, calm, and familiar. Samuel! Nara. Her voice was faint, carried by the storm. It's not over. Not yet. He shouted into the wind. Where are you? The storm tore at his words. Follow the river, she whispered. When it turns black, the circle will close again. The storm exploded outward, hurling him into the air. He hit the ground hard, the breath torn from his chest. The light vanished. The sky was grey again. The whispers stopped, but when he looked up, he saw it, a trail of black water cutting across the sand, flowing east toward the mountains. It shouldn't have been there. The desert hadn't seen water in years. He staggered to his feet, clutching his chest. The golden circle pulsed once like a heartbeat. He turned toward the black river, its surface rippling under a wind that carried voices just beyond hearing. And somewhere within that darkness, Reeves's laughter returned. The river wasn't supposed to exist. Black as obsidian, it wound through the desert like a living scar, its surface swallowing the light of the moon. The closer Samuel came, the quieter the world became. Even the wind held its breath. He dismounted, his boots sinking into the damp sand. Every instinct told him to turn back, but the pull in his chest, where the golden circle glowed faintly, kept him moving. The whisper of Nara's voice still echoed in his head. Follow the river. When it turns black, the circle will close again. The air thickened, humming with something alive. The surface of the water rippled, not from wind, but from movement below. Samuel knelt, peering into the darkness. For a moment, he saw his reflection, then dozens of others layered behind it. Apache faces, children, old men, Nara, all looking up at him. He whispered, I'm sorry. Their reflections blinked in unison. From behind, a voice broke the silence. Don't waste breath on ghosts. Reeves. Samuel turned. The man was half shadow now, his flesh gone grey and cracked like burnt wood. He moved like smoke, his boots leaving no prints. "You led me straight to it," Reeves said. "The river of the dead, the one your Apache woman used to pray to." Samuel raised his revolver. The metal gleamed gold now, humming like a heartbeat. "You're not walking out of here," Reeves laughed, low and dry. "Neither are you." He stepped into the black water. The surface didn't ripple. It absorbed him. The gold in his burned skin flared bright, and the river responded, glowing from beneath. Shapes stirred within, ancient and restless. "You opened the gate," Reeves said, his voice distorting. "Now something's got to walk through it." "You or me?" Samuel's pulse thundered. The light in his veins grew stronger, crawling up his neck, his jaw, his temples. He could feel the river calling to him, whispering the same words again and again. "Finish it. Balance the circle." He gritted his teeth. "If it's balance they want." He fired. The shot exploded with blinding light. Reeves staggered back, screaming as the bullet burned through him, not flesh to blood, but shadow to fire. The black water boiled, hissing like metal in a forge. Samuel stepped closer, the revolver glowing white-hot in his grip. Reeves fell to his knees, laughter bubbling through the pain. "You think you can kill me? You're part of it now." Samuel raised the gun again, his hand trembling. "Then I'll take it all with me." The river roared. The ground split beneath them, golden fissures cutting through the sand, pouring light into the sky. The air filled with screams, not of pain, but release. Every face Samuel had seen beneath the surface began to rise, their bodies woven from light and dust, the spirits of the dead, free at last. Nara appeared among them, her form flickering like a flame in wind. "Samuel," she said softly, "let it go." He shook his head, breath ragged. "If I stop now, he'll—" "You don't need to fight him. You are the gate. Close it." Reeves lunged forward, grabbing Samuel's wrist. His hand burned where their skin met, both glowing gold. Reeves snarled, "You close it, you die with it." Samuel met his gaze. Maybe that's the point. He tore his hand free, turned the revolver on himself, and fired into the circle on his chest. The light burst outward. The desert disappeared in a storm of gold and ash. The river screamed, folding into itself, swallowing Reeves's twisted figure. The spirits rose higher, their voices blending into a single harmony, a sound like wind through canyon walls, ancient and unending, and at the center of it all, Samuel stood with his arms outstretched, the glow consuming him from within. Nara's voice reached him one last time, quiet and steady. "You brought peace to the land, Samuel Clay. Now rest." He closed his eyes. The light engulfed him. When it faded, there was no sound, no footprints, no bodies. Only the river, now still and clear, reflecting the dawn sky. The blackness had lifted. Far on the horizon, where the sun began to rise, a single hawk circled above the water, its wings catching the first gold light of morning, and for the first time in years, the desert was silent. The sun had already risen by the time the wind stilled. The river, once black and violent, now lay quiet, clear as glass, reflecting the pale gold of the morning sky. Nothing remained of the night's fury. No fire, no voices, no shadows. Samuel stood at the edge of the water, his coat torn and caked with dust. His revolver hung loosely at his side, the metal still faintly warm. He didn't know how long he had been standing there. Minutes, hours, it didn't matter. For the first time in his life, the desert was truly silent. The air carried no whispers, no ghosts, only the slow breath of dawn. He looked down into the river. The reflection staring back at him wasn't quite his own. His face was the same, weathered and lined, but behind his eyes there was light. A soft, golden light. It didn't burn anymore. It belonged there now. He crouched by the water's edge, dipped a hand into the current and felt warmth instead of cold. It wasn't natural warmth. It was peace. The circle had closed. A hawk cried overhead, circling lazily before drifting east. Samuel followed it with his eyes. Beyond the river lay open land, unmarked and unbroken, stretching far toward the horizon. He smiled faintly. "Guess we're both still here." His voice was hoarse, the words dry in his throat, but they carried a quiet truth. Behind him, the sand shifted. He turned, half expecting to see reefs or the shapes of the dead, but it was only wind. Still, for a moment, he thought he heard a woman's laughter carried on it. Nara. He closed his eyes and listened. "When the river runs clear," she had said once, "the land remembers peace." He hadn't understood her then. Now he did. Peace wasn't something you waited for. It was something you gave back, something you bled for, if you had to. He unbuckled his gun belt and dropped it beside the water. The sound was soft, final. For years, he had lived by that weight on his hip. Now, without it, he felt lighter. He turned and began walking upriver, the sun climbing higher behind him. The world around him shimmered, alive again. Green shoots were already sprouting near the bank, tiny things pushing through the sand. The land was healing. He didn't know where he was going, but for once he didn't need to. Maybe he'd find a new town. Maybe he'd ride until there was no one left to remember his name. Maybe he'd just keep walking until the wind took what was left of him. Didn't matter. The promise was kept. A soft breeze passed, brushing his cheek. He smiled again. "Thank you," he whispered. And somewhere, far beyond the mortal world, a voice answered, warm, familiar, and free. "You finally listened." He stopped and looked back one last time. The desert stretched endlessly behind him, the river glinting like a vein of light across its heart. Then he turned toward the horizon and walked on. The land watched him go. The sun rose higher, and the story of the man who carried the dead became another whisper in the wind. Some stories aren't meant to be forgotten. They're carried in the dust, in the wind, in the hearts of those who dared to walk between life and death to make things right. If this story touched you, if you felt the weight of its silence and the warmth of its light, subscribe to the channel. There are more tales waiting beyond the horizon, and each one begins with a whisper.